Hello, dear learners. First of all, I welcome you all to this module on gender and the media. This is the 6th unit of the second module belonging to the second week of the course on gender and the media. The name of this particular unit is Development of Mass Media. And the name of this second module is Media Basic Concepts. In an earlier unit, you've got a brief overview about the concept of mass media, the characteristics of mass media, reach and access of mass media, and the role of mass media in the society. In this particular unit, you will get to know the early communication systems in India, media's role during the freedom struggle, and the state of mass media during the pre- and the post-independent period. So far, you must have got a fair amount of idea regarding the various aspects of mass media in the light of its importance in the life of human beings as a bridge between the masses and mass communicators. We all know that there has been a major boom in the media sector almost all over the world. Our nation, India, is also benefiting from this unprecedented growth of the media sector, which is helping our population to have a much wider choice of media options. So we can now pick up a newspaper, a magazine, a TV, or a radio channel, or even a film, a book, or even a public relations agency out of hundreds or thousands of such agencies functioning today. In this unit, we would like to introduce you to this growing world of mass media in India so that you can get a fair idea of how the mass media in India has developed over the years, despite so many constraints in the initial years. You will also be familiarized with its latest trends along with various aspects of this development. And this may help you while looking for a career choice in this field, enabling you to judge for yourself as to which one has a potentially better prospect in the future. Now, to begin with, let us try to understand the early communication systems in India. India had a strong tradition of communication system that predates the time when there was no formal method of communication. Traditional beliefs and practices were passed on orally to generations after generations. Our very own Vedas, Puranas, Upanishads stand as a testimony to the rich treasure house of the earlier thoughts in the forms of folk tales, myths, epic stories, and hymns. History unfolds the existence of wandering monks and mendicants who used to wander from place to place to spread ideas, stories, and give religious discourses on epics, books, and scriptures, accompanied by some sort of music. Pilgrimages always acted as the centers of all cultural and religious activities since time immemorial, where people used to go to enrich their religious and cultural ideas and knowledge. India also possesses a history of the existence of formal education system for the purpose of imparting religious ideas and thoughts. Knowledge centers like Nalanda, Taxila, Vikramshila are only a few to name where education was imparted. Even though the educational contents mainly consisted of spiritual, religious, and cultural discourses, unlike what we have today. The later period saw the Christian missionaries playing a crucial role in developing Indian languages and literature. Despite their efforts being directed towards spreading Christianity in India, it worked as a boon for the development of many regional languages. Christian missionaries are also credited for bringing about mass communication environment in India. It was the missionaries who first established printing presses at many places in India during the 16th century. And this had changed the communication environment in the continent, after which communication became easy. Human tasks were taken over by the machine and could reach many people at a time in the form of books, pamphlets, and other propagandist materials. Gradually, printing centers were established in other places as well, and India saw the proliferation of mass communication in the country. However, the real mass communication process started much later during the British rule in the country. And the first newspaper started was by James Augustus Hickey on January 29, 1780. The name of the paper was Bengal Gazette or Calcutta General Advertiser. Prior to that, there was another Englishman by the name of William Bowles who tried to bring out a newspaper in the year 1776, but it did not succeed. It may be mentioned that after the attempt by Hickey, many other newspapers, both in English and Indian languages, gradually appeared during the British rule. Books, newspapers, and some other kinds of printed materials were the only mass communication vehicles present in the pre-independent India. In the post-independence period, India first saw the advent of electronic media in a form of radio and then in the television much later, especially during the 70s. However, cinema as an aid of the mass communication system and entrailing the masses came into existence from the last decade of the 19th century. And this is how the Indian communication system developed over the ages, eventually reaching the present situation in which the mass communication system overrules all other forms of communication. Now let us try to understand the role of media during the freedom struggle, during India's freedom struggle. India was under the British colonial rule for several decades. We all know that. The freedom struggle was aimed at securing independence and self-rule by throwing out the British power. The freedom struggle finally met with success in 1947 when India won freedom from the hegemonic foreign rule that lasted for about 200 years. But it was during this period that the Indian press was first born and its journey along the rough terrain of an oppressive foreign rule had not been smooth. The first newspaper was brought out in 1780 by James Augustus Hickey. He was an East India Company's employee. It was known as a Bengal Gazette or Calcutta General Advertiser. And this paper mostly dealt with stories that highlighted the personal lives and doings or other wrongdoings of the company's officials. However, the paper earned the wrath of the government and did not last long. But the closure of the paper led to the appearance of many other newspapers in India, like the Madras Gazette in Madras, Bengal Journal, Bengal Harkaru, Samachar Darpan, Digdarshan in Bengal, Raja Rammohan Roy's Sambar Kaumudi in Bengal language, and Miratul Akbar in Persian language. The first Indian-owned newspaper, Bengal Gazette, started by Gangadhar Bhattacharya, also made its way into the scene. However, it needs to be mentioned that during this time a number of censorship rules were employed by the East India Company upon the press. Yet, these rules were neither severely enforced nor strictly followed by the Indian press. In a way, the press in India had seen a conducive atmosphere. A number of language newspapers in Bengali, Marathi, Oriya, Assamese, Gujarati also appeared during this period. In 1878, by which time the nationalist movement was beginning to show signs of becoming strong, the then Governor General, Lord Lytton, promulgated the Vernacular Press Act. This particular act, it allowed the government to clamp down the publications of newspapers and journals in Indian languages on grounds that they were seditious, and also to impose sanctions on printers and publishers who did not support the British Empire. This act was repealed in 1880 after Lord Ripon became the Governor General. The arrival of Mahatma Gandhi onto the scene and thereafter his hold on the freedom struggle, it was a landmark event for the nation and the press as well. Mahatma Gandhi, along with some other leaders of the struggle, used the press to speed up the momentum of the freedom movement they were leading. In fact, the press was a means to reach the people across the nation. Otherwise, it would have been a daunting task for the leaders to bring the entire masses to a common platform and to make them fight unitedly against the oppressive British regime. Most of the leaders at the forefront of the freedom movement, like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Annie Besant, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad, and above all Mahatma Gandhi, they brought out their own newspapers to propagate their views, generate public support, and ensure their participation in the movement. Their daring writings through the editorial columns of their papers inspired millions, accelerated the pace of the freedom movement so much so that the British government enforced stringent laws to curb the press, like the Official Secrets Act of 1923 or the Books and Publication Newspapers Act. These were some of the laws that were enforced to gag the press with an iron hand. But such ruthless laws of the British government, it failed to halt the growth of the Indian press. On the contrary, the implementation of this series of laws by the rulers, it stirred the passions of the native press, and they continued with a stronger determination their crusade against the British. Many existing newspapers of today had their birth during this period. The Times of India, the Pioneer, the Hindu, the Statesman, Anand Bazar Patrika, the Tribune, and the Indian Express are some of the most notable examples. The sacrifice of the leaders of the movement, the relentless crusade of the press, and the massive participation by the people finally brought in liberty for the country and put a curtain on the British rule on Indian soil. Now, coming to the pre-independence era mass media. The mass media in the pre-independence era, it refers to newspapers of that period, as the other forms of mass media like television and radio came a little bit later on. Apart from newspapers, film was another mass medium meant specially for entertaining the Indian masses with screen spectacles. Films were theme carriers on many vital issues of the period, the freedom movement being one of them. Therefore, apart from entertaining the people, film was also used to educate them and inspire them to cope with the various problems of life at both personal and social level. And the press at that point of time, it comprised both English and other regional language newspapers. And as mentioned earlier, during the initial phase of the freedom struggle, the press was relatively free, even though the British government enforced some laws to keep a strict control over it. And these laws, in fact, it helped the ruling elite to maintain a check on the voice of the press, and the press indeed did not dare to go beyond exposing some lacunae on part of the government officials. But with the passage of time, as the freedom movement gained momentum, the Indian press also became more unsparing in their criticism of the British government. And this led the government to enforce stronger rules or other laws against the press. And this plethora of laws proved to be a major setback for the growth and development of Indian press, finally resulting in the closure of many newspapers. So thus the Indian press in the pre-independent period, it gifted us not only the leaders, but also the very foundation of an independent press system in the country. And it is very worthwhile to mention here that since its infancy till India gained freedom, the Indian press exhibited some common traits. Except for a few newspapers, all of them struggled with a common mission of liberating the country from the foreign rule. And most of the newspapers at that point of time, they were, kind of imbued with the same zeal of throwing out the British rule. So the press was an effective instrument for drawing the entire masses to the same platform for mobilizing them and ensuring their support for the freedom movement. Now, let us try to look at the development of mass media in the post-independent era. Mass media in India, which is the largest democracy in the world, have been showing an unprecedented development, which can be adequately termed as nothing short of a revolution. The media scenario of the country, it has come of age as tremendous advancements are being made in each and every aspect of this field. Now let us briefly try to look into some of the important mass media in India in a post-independence period, how the development has taken place in this, the different forms of mass media. First, we have the press. Now, even though we have more than 62,000 newspapers and journals of different types today, the situation was not that similar now. It was very different at that point of time. In 1956, there were just around 6,500 newspapers and journals or magazines, having a circulation figure of 9 million copies in all. Of course, with a period of time, the circulation figure has really improved, that has really increased. And it is very important to note here that the Indian print media are steadily expanding their market share, even against a very stiff competition from the electronic media. And this is at a time when people all over the world cast a serious doubt about the future of the print media, but it has been proved wrong now. Then we have television. It may look quite surprising that television, which is considered as a major instrument for entertainment today, it started in our country as an educational medium way back in late 1950s. And it was launched as a part of All India Radio with a very limited share of programs till 1978, when it was separated from All India Radio. The telecasting in color was started in India in 1982, and this may be considered as an important moment for Doordarshan. And today, coming into a close competition with so many private cable and satellite TV channels in the country, Doordarshan has also launched several channels for catering to the crores of people in every nook and corner of the country. And just like All India Radio, Doordarshan has a very good presence and penetration in a country's remote, rural and semi-rural areas, in addition to the urban areas, and thereby it enjoys a very high revenue earning capacity from advertising. Most of the companies, they prefer it compared to the private channels for this very reason. In the 1980s, Doordarshan also went for a major expansion by making its presence felt even in the remotest places of the country. Today, most of the semi-urban and town areas have Doordarshan centers as well as transmission and relay centers for carrying the programs to the masses in the proper sense of the term. And it is also very much important to mention here that two very interesting experiments took place on a big scale. Basically, these experiments were carried out to check the effectiveness of television as an educational medium in 1975. One was the famous satellite instructional television experiment, which is popularly known as a SITE experiment, SITE, and the other one was a Khera experiment. Now, as far as the SITE program is concerned, it had selected around 2,400 villages in 6 states of the country, where many television sets were installed, mostly in the public places of those villages, where many people congregated every day. Women and people from weaker sections of the society were especially encouraged to watch those television sets. And specially prepared education programs were produced and broadcast. So they were aimed at this target audiences to make them gain some benefit from those programs. Now the programs were quite very successful actually in achieving its goals, and is still regarded as one of the major experiments in utilizing television as an instrument for public awareness and education. On the other hand, the Khera experiment was somewhat very much similar to the community TV or community radio station system, which has become highly popular nowadays. Under this program, what happened is that a small caliber TV station was set up in the Dan backward district of Kheda in Gujarat with the help of Indian Space Research Organization in 1975. The target area of the station was small, and all the programs which were produced and telecast addressed at least some type of issues concerning the local people. And every program was previewed. It was viewed beforehand by a select group of elders and learned people from the area for spotting anything which might be discriminatory to any section of the people, and also to ensure that the programs did not contain anything derogatory about anyone, any organization or institution. So this experimental project initially, with a year-long time frame, was so successful and popular among the people that when it was to be concluded, the people demanded that it should continue for more. This was a popularity. So these two projects are examples of how television could be used for people's awareness when we regard this medium basically as a means of entertainment. Now coming back to the present scenario, Doordarshan has basically two important channels. One is a DD National and the other is DD News. While the first one is an old channel, DD News channel is a new one which was launched, not exactly new one. It was launched a couple of years back, but it's still very much popular even today. Doordarshan also telecasts several public service oriented programs through its channels at national and regional levels for people's benefit. Now let us try to understand the evolution and growth of radio. So far we have tried to analyze how press has evolved, how television has evolved over a period of time. Now let us try to understand the evolution of radio. Now, we are very much familiar with this particular medium, radio. Till a few years back, radio in our country meant only All India Radio. And radio in India was started in the form of a few private short distance transmission centers in the decade of 1920s and then late 1930s. In 1947, when the country became independent, there were just 6 radio stations all over the country, which have gone up to more than 200 full-fledged All India radio stations today that are supported by a network of many transmission and relay centers, taking its messages into remotest corners of the country. All India Radio has been doing a highly commendable job ever since its inception, and it broadcasts numerous programs in different languages and dialects, including foreign languages also. And till about early 1980s, when Doordarshan television network was not very much widespread, All India Radio was the only medium for communication or for dissemination of information that included news as well as other programs. And it is still a very important medium of communication at present. Radio is still not a very free medium, but the government went ahead with the program of allowing private parties to set up radio channels when in the early 1990s, private FM channels were allowed to operate. Now, though the first round of allowing private FM radio channels was not very successful, yet in the third round of this initiative that was launched a couple of years back, about 330 FM radio centers were opened up, and its numbers are increasing with every passing year. So radio is a true medium of the masses because it is the cheapest medium and it is easily available to people. There is a great future scope for this medium, and we must not neglect this medium as an essentially rural medium. And it needs to be mentioned here that, a landmark judgment in 1995, the Supreme Court of India declared that the use of airwaves which are public property must be regulated for the optimum use for public good of the greatest number. Besides, broadcasting being a means of communication, and thereby it has a far-reaching effect for the masses. And so no party, including the government, NGOs, individuals or others, can claim exclusive rights over them. And there are other important projects that were carried out. Like we have the Radio Rural Forums for Agricultural Development in 1967. There was a promotion of adult literacy. Then the GramSat experiment of 1995. So these experiments have yielded various or very much invaluable lessons on software, hardware, and organizational management. And a pioneer in the field of using radio for education purposes is the Indira Gandhi National Open University, which is dedicated towards spreading formal education amongst the masses residing in the far and wide corners of the country and abroad through the distance education mode. And it was in December 2001 that it started setting up a series of FM radio stations at a few selected places in a pilot project. Very soon, with the wide reception received from the general audience, number of FM radio stations is expanded to many other places as well. Now let us come to the evolution of films, which is another important medium of communication and the important mass media of communication. There is hardly any need to introduce you to the world of Indian film industry. I mean, we all have grown up watching films, right? Be it regional language cinema, be it the mainstream Hindi language cinema, or be it other English language films. Our country produces on an average 800 films every year. It's a humongous number, one of the highest even by global standards. While Mumbai is the topmost film producing center for the country, yet we have a highly vibrant regional film industry also, mainly in South Indian states and to a lesser extent in the other states. Since independence, we have been served with a big variety of films, mainly led by social drama, artistic movies, and films virtually on every possible theme of our life, be it sports, science fiction, violence, children's issues, women's issues, and the list is endless. So it is important to note here that films have been making their presence felt in a big way in many foreign countries, irrespective of whether there are people of Indian origin in those places or not. So we have seen how films have made a huge impact on our lives in a society, right? Now this trend is slightly changing its functioning. Now most of the established, accomplished filmmakers, they produce or direct their films with a dual audience base in their mind. For the people of Indian origin settled in a foreign land for a long term, in addition to the local audience base. So thereby we have managed to gain a globally accepted population for our film industry. Now let us come to advertising. It is also another important medium of communication, another important mass media, mass communication channel through which ideas can be expressed, through which matters can be communicated. The advertising industry scenario in India is very dynamic, with a majority of the world's most prestigious and large advertising agencies having their presence here. And it is important to note that both the print media and television news channels, being significant media entities in the country, have managed to gain a major lead in advertising. Now, if we look at the growth of the advertising industry, in 2023, the advertising agency in India generated over 1.1 trillion Indian rupees, which is a 7% increase from the previous year. And digital media is a leading advertising medium in India, accounting for more than half of the advertising revenue. In 2023, digital media accounted for 55% of advertising spending followed by television and print at 25% and 16% respectively. Now, what are the factors that drives this particular growth of advertising agency? The growing adoption of advertising, increasing number of media and entertainment models, and rising demand for digital advertising solutions are some of the key factors driving the market. And emerging trends in artificial intelligence, extended reality, and sustainability are expected to reshape this advertising industry. Now, when it comes to public relations, the scope and benefits as well as the importance of public relations were not understood and appreciated in the right manner for quite a long period of time in the Indian society. However, in the last 2 decades or so, the industry has realized its due significance and has taken up a lot of steps for utilizing this system for improving the image of the institutions, organizations, and even for personal images. Today, most of the government departments, public sector undertakings, private enterprises, education institutions are employing the services of public relations for making their presence felt in the country. So, summing up, we have seen that India in the past had a unique system of communication in the form of wandering monks, travelers and pilgrims who used to move around in order to pass on messages in the form of religious discourses. However, after the establishment of printing press in the country, communication became easier as books, pamphlets, and other kinds of printed materials could be easily circulated among the masses. And as time went on, newspapers also came to the fore as a powerful medium of mass communication. We have found that the Indian media industry has achieved significant success in terms of volume of business and a global presence during the 6 decades after independence. Today, we have a booming mass media industry covering every field of mass communication, from journalism, advertising, to public relations, films, and others. One major issue we have been confronting here is a lack of sufficient amount of trained and experienced manpower or human resources for working in these outlets. Today, we can comfortably say that our mass media industry is more or less comparable with any of its counterparts in a modern developed nations in every count: professional standards, contents, reach and access, etc. This trend has to be carried on further, as this will help us immensely in establishing ourselves in a global forum, as well as keep on providing adequate opportunities for professional and meaningful employment for our students in the days to come. So with this, we have come to the end of today's discussion on the unit Development of Mass Media. Thank you all so much.